Go.
So good afternoon. My name is Ruby Reyes. I'm the Adult Literacy Hotline Coordinator. Thank you for joining this webinar. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Adult Literacy Hotline. How many of you are familiar with the Adult Literacy Hotline? Can just, I guess, raise your hand on the chat if you can. Okay. All right. Well, so the Adult Literacy Hotline is about 25 years old. We're going in our 26th year this year. We're a resource for adult learners, educators, and volunteers. And we're a project of World Education, but we're funded by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And so what is the Adult Literacy Hotline? So we have two components. The first is a website with an online searchable database for over 300 adult education programs and volunteer opportunities. And so we're only Massachusetts based, we're not New England based. We include programming that is adult basic ed, ESOL, GED, HiSET, citizenship courses, and adult diploma programs. For volunteers, we also have different volunteer opportunities. And if your programs are in search of volunteers, you should include that in your program listings as well as your classes. We also have transition to college programs and some vocational and job training programs. We also have general information in the hotline about career centers, licensed childcare providers, high school equivalency exams, and resources. So there are links to other additional resources. So right here, I'm gonna kind of walk us through the website. And so the website is different from the call center. This is what the website looks like. And it's designed so that it's super easy to use for someone who may be challenged in terms of technology. And so there's not a lot of bells and whistles to it. You can find a program. Here's the high school equivalency links for information. So where to get your credential, where to get your GED or HiSET test scores, and how to kind of find this information. Here are different volunteer opportunities. So you can also, like I said, you can find volunteer opportunities in using the Adult Literacy Hotline. And you can also list your volunteer opportunities. This here is the Career Center information, and it links directly to all the different Mass Hire sites. So you can also find a center near you. And then we also have Career Center listings inside of the database that you can find as students are looking for, if they're looking for that type of support. The Mass Hire program, they tend to have a lot of workshops and things, and resume writing, and job seeking workshops for job training. But they also are more in the 9-to-5 realm. They're not in the after hours realm. So, but we do link to them so that you can easily find a Mass Hire site if one of your students is looking for those resources. And then here's the licensed childcare resources as well. And it also has a link to where you can find a provider in your area based on whatever search, whatever zip code you're looking for in that area. So those are just some of the additional resources in the website. Let me go back to find a program. So if you're looking to find a program, and this works really well for adult educators, but learners can also use it. Like I said, we try to make it as simple to use as possible. So our website does not have a lot of bells and whistles, but you identify yourself. Are you a learner? Are you looking for a volunteer opportunity? What are you looking for? If you're looking for English language, you can go to next step. I put Dorchester because that's where I live. And so I usually do a 10-mile radius search because folks often can travel. In some places in rural parts of Massachusetts, there's not a lot of resources in your area. And so you have to put 10 miles because of the lack of programs in that area. And so then you hit next step. And so you can put a zip code based on where you live or based on where you work or based on where you're staying. You can share as little or as much information as you want. It's where the person will be accessing the courses that they're looking for, the resources that they're looking for. So it's not necessarily defined by where you live. So you can put what time the person is looking for classes if you're searching for a student, if they're in the mornings or in the evenings, and if you need services to provide childcare. Unfortunately, there are so few programs that offer childcare that if you do click on that, you're going to diminish your search significantly. Before, the state used to offer a lot more resources to program sites in order for them to be able to provide childcare and transportation. But unfortunately, with a lot of the reduction in funds over the past few years, a lot of those additional services have been cut. And so most of the programs that are able to provide childcare are usually small, not DESE funded programs. Because they usually just have one of the staff people or a volunteer do it. So I'm going to click on it and we can see which ones offer childcare in the Dorchester area. So here is a list of the programs that offer childcare that are in the afternoons. 10-mile radius. So you can see that the closest to me is Mujeres Unidos. And then the next one is in Charlestown, East Boston, and Chelsea. If you go back and take out the childcare, it'll produce a much larger search that are closer to you. And so the hotline itself is limited by the number of programs that are available. And I try very hard to find non-DESE funded programs as well as DESE funded programs because, a lot of these programs, for example, Mujeres Unidos Avanzando works with women who are parenting. And so if you're not a woman who's parenting, you can't really go to their programs. So a lot of the programs have funding restrictions to who they can accept or not accept. And so we include a lot of that information if you call and try to get information from it. And so it'll take you to the website, it'll take you to the listing, it has the phone number, and then it has the cost here. So we try to incorporate programs that are low cost to no cost. But some of them do have like small registration fees or they cover books. Some of them do charge tuition, but none of them, we don't incorporate anything that costs over $800. And the majority of the programs that do charge registration or tuition, it's maybe $600 or lower. Most of them are like $200 to $300. So I'm very finicky about who we incorporate because of the cost. And so you're not going to find one of those expensive private programs in here. And so you can see the phone number is primarily what we direct folks to call the program and get more information and make sure that you have the most up-to-date information from the program site itself. And so that is how the website works. It's we try to make it, like I said, as easy as possible for folks that are, not necessarily the most advanced in their technology skills. Unfortunately, the website is not translated. It's all in English. So when you click on one of these, it kind of creates a profile that you can print out as well. And it has more of the information that I was talking about. Here's the eligibility: 16 plus, female only, Latino, Spanish speaking, low income. So those are the eligibility requirements to apply. And then into Mujeres Unidos Avanzando, it has a contact person, and it has their email. So if email is easier, you can also direct a person to use the translation tools when they send email. And then it's open during the summer. Here are the cycles. And then is training included? So this is for accepting volunteers. If they accept volunteers, we ask if training is included. We also ask if there's a requirement of time for the volunteers. And so if you're searching for volunteers, you should indicate that information as well. So that is the website in a nutshell. Like I said, we try to make it as easy as possible. And I'm going to go back to the slides.
Ruby, there's a question here from someone who noticed that there were some links in various languages at the bottom of the, I think it was the homepage of the hotline. What are the resources that are available in languages other than English?
Yes, okay. So that's in a slide further down in my presentation, but I'm happy to share it as well. So all of our, we have flyers that we send out in 16 different languages, and they're all downloadable here at the bottom in the language about the hotline. So if you're looking to print out a flyer and incorporate this information at your site, you can print out the hotline flyer directly from the website as a PDF. And so it basically has all the information about what the hotline is, when you can call, and the website. But the majority, because our website is not translated into multiple languages, the call center is available in multiple languages. And so we do try to direct folks into the call center. So that's what that is. And like I said, we have 16 different languages. They're the most mostly spoken languages in Massachusetts. I can see here there's another question. AB open entry ESL. Does that mean that no specific start date or anyone can join? Yes, that's exactly what it means. So some programs will take folks whenever, and then some require registration. And so it just varies. Like I said, some of them are funded by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and then some of them are not. And so each program kind of varies in its requirements, and it varies in, their eligibility, and it depends a lot on their funding. There's a question here about high school equivalency programs that are online. Yes, so you can search for programs that offer distance learning as an option. And let me do a quick search here. So high school equivalency, Dorchester. we'll just say evening. So it'll say whether or not distance learning is an option for the program site. Where is it? Here's the test center, pre-GED, 16 plus, cost-free, English spoken. Oh, I guess it doesn't say it on the profile. Oh, it is a searchable option if you request it when you call the call center. You can ask for distance learning as an option, and you can perform a search saying, I think it probably is types of services. It's listed down here if the program is does offer distance learning. Let me see. This one I think does. Nope. So I think hold on. This one will offer it, I think. Yeah, so this one offers distance learning. And so you can't perform that search via the website, but like I said, you can call the call center and they can do a search for you for distance learning programs. And they'll be able to find them. And then the types of services down here, if a program does offer distance learning, it'll be incorporated in there. And a lot of the programs, their current programming, their current students have been moved to distance learning and online. And then some of the programs will be incorporating more distance learning work. But the reality is that there's not a ton of programs that offer distance learning. We only have 17 in the database. And so, I actually, the Mujeres Unidas, well, sometimes we depend on that type of information. We usually do a big mailing at the end of the summer, requesting that you update your program sites with their information. And so if you get those in the mail, please complete them and send them back. I don't get a lot back in the mail, so I really have to spend time calling your programs and emailing your programs and asking for updated information. So if you do get your program listing, please update it and send it back to me. You can make the edits on the sheet and just scan it and send it back, and I can have the most update information as possible. And like I said, some programs offer distance learning and others do not. So it just varies depending on the program and depending on, unfortunately, the funding, the revenue streams. So are there any other questions about the types of programs? So this is, I'm going to transition now. Are there any other questions about the website itself?
That's great. It sounds like there's this is a good opportunity for the folks who are on the line to who are running programs or working at programs to check the listing and send you any changes. I see Luann has put a note in the chat box with Ruby's contact information so that if there are changes to your program, you can email those directly to Ruby. So, but yeah, keep going, Ruby. This is great info.
So the website is one form of information, but really what we really like to make available and really push to folks is the call center. And so the call center is a 1-800 number. You speak with a live person, and that person, there's staff available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to midnight. The call center staff are all bilingual in Spanish, but there's third-party translation available in over 200 different languages. And so the nice thing about the call center is that you're not, being transferred to extension, this and that. And many times when our adult learners are seeking information, they can easily get discouraged. And so, I think it's really important to have somebody that they can directly contact and speak with, who can help them get connected to the information. And then they can give as little or as much information as they want. I usually tell folks that if they want to give their zip code, it's dependent on where they'll be taking the courses. And so they can give their work zip code, they can give the zip code of, where they stay mostly. So just being really sensitive to the fact that folks aren't always willing to share a lot of personal information. But at least there is available folks that speak Spanish, so they can talk to someone and kind of try to figure out what are the best class options for them. And like I said, there's a live person and it's open from 6 a.m. to midnight. So folks can call before work or after work or on the weekends. So as the coordinator, I do get a lot of the calls that the call center cannot answer. So the call center will do a search for the person and share 3 different phone numbers and sites for them to call and see if they have a wait list or if there's options available for them. But if there is something more customized that's needed, I usually try to find answers for folks. And so some of our questions have varied depending on the person's need. So that the range is just really huge. I had one person who was looking for a volunteer to read his mail because he was severely dyslexic and his parents had passed away and his parents would read his mail every week. So he basically was like, I'm not looking to learn to read because I can't. I just need someone to read my mail. And so finding him a volunteer to read his mail every week, which is what his parents would do before. And we've had calls. One gentleman was blind and was looking to complete his GED. And so finding him resources at a site that would be able to accommodate those needs, I think was, calling different programs to see what they were able to offer. So it just varies. And I think really what I do is a lot of problem solving. So if, for example, if there's someone who's not able to take part in a regular class and needs a drop-in, I usually recommend different conversation circles or conversation groups that are happening at the different libraries. Usually those are like moms that can't, if they have small children or they're just not able to like participate regularly because of work. We're able to find them conversation groups. The same thing for folks that are looking, maybe enrolled in a class, but looking to do extra, finding them, also getting them connected to different resources like conversation groups or, literacy volunteers. So, those are the types of additional things that I try to find for folks. And so it varies. Some people are also looking for job training programs. I had a call last week where they wanted culinary, a job training program in culinary, but that was not too expensive. And so that's kind of what I do. And so the programs in the database, like I said, they're not all funded by the state. There's a lot of, the range is huge. There's small, little, tiny volunteer-based programs. There's some in church basements. There's one in Brockton that charges $25 for photocopies, and that's it. And they have like 50 students. They don't ask questions. They just ask you to sign in. So, it's just, the range is huge. And so it's kind of nice being able to offer or incorporate all these different programs, regardless of size and whatnot, into the database. And like I said, a lot of them, we look for programs that don't charge a lot. Unfortunately, the job training programs that are offered are really expensive. So we try to find those that are under $1,000, but because they're so expensive, there's so few that are under $1,000. And so who is the hotline designed for? It's designed primarily for learners. We try to make it as user-friendly as possible. I always tell people, if you can make a phone call, you can get connected to classes. So if you can call your cousin or you can call your daughter, you can find a class. And I think that that's really, really important, because I think a lot of times, there's so many barriers to accessing adult education. And so we try to make it as easy as possible. And so a lot of the outreach I do is, leaving flyers at laundromats or at barbershops and trying to really connect to folks that really need these lack access to this type of education. And then it's also for educators. So if you have students that are maybe need additional resources or are transferring or are moving, finding classes for them in different parts of the state, it's also for you to get those classes to them. And then it's for volunteers. So if you're looking to volunteer, if you're looking to start a volunteer run program, I always encourage folks to really think about pushing for volunteer programs, maybe in some of your community-based organizations or in your churches, to make sure that folks are able to have access. I think there's a shortage of classes available, and there's so much wait list that if you have the opportunity to create a volunteer program, you definitely should. And then, so check out the website and then check out the Hotline Flyers. And like I said, they're in 16 different languages. They're downloadable on the website. And you can connect with me in these ways. As I said, we're limited by the number of programs that are available across the state. I really, really want to stress how important it is to update your program listing every year. We try to have the most up-to-date information, and because each program receives funding from different sources, in addition to, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, you also probably have small grants that you receive here and there. And so many of those grants have eligibility requirements and things of that nature that it's important to update your listing so we can have the most up-to-date information, so that when someone is looking for a class, if it's 16 plus or 16 to 27, we don't want to send somebody who's 54 there to call and get frustrated. And so, please update your listing with us. I think that's all the more important now, post-COVID. A lot of programs, like I said, have transitioned to doing online work. And some of their students are able to continue, and then some of them are not. And so this also creates, space for other students. And so there's sometimes you can have more flexibility with online in terms of being able to incorporate more students, but really making sure that you're up to date with your listing. I think right now, in the midst of COVID, a lot of folks are, they're not applying to programs at all because they're not trying to leave the house. And so really just making them aware of the fact that they can register online, that they can do classes online. A lot of people don't have internet access at home. They have it on their phone. So how do you provide them with mobile resources, which, I've been sharing with them. And so I think really making it as accessible as possible, despite the fact that, there's so much stress and uncertainty going on right now with being sheltered in place. The families either just don't have the capacity at all, or, they are bored at home. And so I think really just being able to update your listing and say, hey, we offer distance learning, or, we're transitioning to incorporate it in the fall. I think those are really important things to just call and let me know, or you can email me, whatever is easier. What kind of literacy training or resources do you provide to volunteers? So we do not ourselves, the Adult Literacy Hotline does not itself provide training, but a lot of the programs that do accept volunteers provide trainings. And so there's some that offer a 30-minute orientation or a 2-hour orientation. And then there's some that have like all day trainings for their volunteers. And so it varies from site to site. If folks want to volunteer, some of them have like volunteer coordinators, and some of them have volunteer coordinators and some of them don't. And so it's, being able to say what the volunteer opportunities are, I think are really important. And if there's a time commitment. So some require at least 1 to 2 hours a week or 1 to 2 hours a month. So it just varies. We do not have an office area in the Worcester area. Our office is in Boston, but like so many people, it's my basement right now. We do not have an office area in Worcester, but we do happily and proudly serve the Worcester area. Love Worcester.
And Ruby, I think that brings up a good question. The question was whether or not there was information about Worcester, but can you speak a little bit of, I know we've talked in the past that there are some parts of the state that have lots of programs. There are parts of the state that are more of like program deserts. Can you speak a little bit about where maybe some of those deserts are and where you're looking for additional programs, if people have ideas or thoughts about where programs are that could be added to the hotline resources?
Sure. So the Worcester area has, it has a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but it has more resources than other areas, and the groups there are pretty well networked. I would say the Springfield area, they're pretty well networked too, but they have less programs. So there's parts of the state that are completely just lacking in resources. I'd say the Chicopee area, I think there's like the volunteers, I forget the name of it, the Valley Opportunity Council. So they have courses, but they don't really have any other resources in the Chicopee area. Springfield, like I said, has less resources than other parts of the state. Fall River has, I think, 4 programs for all of the Fall River area. They are really in need of resources. Brockton has, they have pretty robust programming, but a lot of it is not funded through the state. So they have 1 or 2 traditional DESE funded programs, and then the rest are like small CBO, private community-based organization and church-based programs. There's Avon, I think, has 1 program, which, they usually go to Brockton. Randolph is also in need of programming. I think they have like maybe 2 sites. And they also usually go to Brockton, but Randolph also is in need of resources. I would say, Lawrence, they're kind of like Springfield in the sense that they have a good, the programs that they do have are pretty well connected, but they also need more resources in that area. Same thing with the Lowell area. So I think overall, the places that have more resources also have larger immigrant populations or low-income areas that require more resources. And so while some areas have more, they still need more. But I think for me, the Chicopee area is just a desert. It just really needs, it needs some infusion, as well as Fall River. So those are just areas that, need some attention. Are there any other questions? I wanted to share this final slide because I've been trying to find more online resources in order to be able to share them with folks as well. As I call program sites, just being able to say, hey, have you, looked into this? And, I hate to be the the cheerleader of World Ed, but I wanted to include the EdTech Center in there. There's a lot of great resources for educators at the EdTech Center as folks are transitioning to online. There's also the Change Agent. I love the Change Agent. It's an incredible resource, also available online for, I usually say it's an additional resource currently, even before COVID, for folks that want to continue learning on their own. So you can find the article, you can read it while you're listening to it. So it's great for just kind of like the whole experience of trying to improve your language acquisition. And the articles are really good. So the next one is going to be about the pandemic. And you can also use it as homework assignment or a classroom assignment. So you can write an article and submit it, and then, be part of the volunteer editorial board. So it's just kind of a great resource all around. Switchboard TA. So this was from another presentation that I watched that was really great from the Sabes crew. And it's just got information about COVID in multiple different languages. And then Chargimly, which is translation services online. I tried to register for it. It's an app, and they put you with a volunteer to do translation for you. I didn't want to try it because then I felt like it would be wrong for me to kind of like use up a volunteer just to test it out. But they're supposedly really good. I haven't, like I said, I don't know if I would feel bad if they like try to find me a volunteer to speak English and Spanish, and then I'm like, just kidding. So if anybody has students that want to try it out, I'd love to hear back from you too, and see what your experience is with it. Just because, I think trying out these different resources is really important. So yeah, I highly encourage you all to explore these different options and see what you can find online for your students as resources, but also for you as educators who are looking for maybe online courses. And I also kind of just wanted to know how folks are I guess, weathering the storm. And if there's any additional resources that you found that have been helpful, and maybe putting those into the chat box for others to share. I don't know if a lot of callers that I've spoken to have talked about the need to be in a classroom setting and how important it is for them and how they learn. And so I know that as we are going through all of this, a lot of folks are not accessing educational classes because they need that more one-on-one or that classroom setting to learn in. And so, I just, as you all are experiencing this from the educator side, just thinking about when things will, quote unquote, go back to normal, if they ever do, what education is going to look like for students such as those that may fall through the cracks. Any other questions or?
Great. Yeah, here's a question about interpretation services for citizenship interviews, and I expect there's also people who are looking for interpretation for things like unemployment benefits and those types of resources. Are those resources things that you can share, Ruby?
Well, I think the Targimly, I'm not sure. I know it's only on the app. I found it, and you download the app, and so you use the app to like kind of translate back and forth. If folks need their citizenship interview, there's also different volunteer programs that support with that. A lot of times, if a program site offers citizenship classes, sometimes they'll be able to coordinate that as well. And I don't know if they'll do interpretation for a citizenship interview. I don't know how like official they are, and I don't know how official the interview for citizenship, the interpreter needs to be for it. But there are other like community-based organizations that will do it at a lower discounted fee for interpretation. Let me see. Google Classroom and breakout rooms to create and enhance. So in the chat, ILI is using Google Classroom and breakout rooms to create and enhance community in their online classrooms. We've gotten good feedback from the students who have participated. That's great. That's awesome. A lot of people are doing, like the Google Classroom or Zoom those seem to be the two kind of like major options. But I'm glad folks feel connected. I'll definitely put that in my notes.
Great. I'm gonna start sharing, go back to our presentation here. I see we've had a lot of good questions. If there's any final questions that people have here in the chat box, please feel free to add those and we can continue to address. Just gonna share a little bit of additional information with folks as we start to wrap up. And because this question came about online classrooms, I wanna share with you that we've got 2 additional webinars coming up, one next week on teacher self-care, which I think is going to be incredibly important during this time, and another one on May 18th around some different tools for blended and distance learning. So as people are thinking about the other types of resources for doing distance learning, I think we'll have some things here that will be very relevant to people. I want to also reiterate what Ruby said earlier, that if you have updates for your programs that we should make sure are included in the literacy hotline information, especially as programs are transitioning to online learning or changing the way you're delivering learning, or who you might be offering learning classes to, make sure that your info is updated at the hotline so that they can be sharing the most up-to-date information with everyone else. Ruby, any other final thoughts that you want to share with people about the hotline or how they might use it during this time?
Well, our distance learning sites are up to date. So if folks are looking to find additional resources, or you as educators are looking to connect with those distance learning sites, you can definitely call and see, who has it and who's been using it for the past, several years.
Great. Okay, so I'm just going to share with you a couple more pieces of information. We mentioned the next 2 webinars coming up the next 2 Mondays, so please feel free to register for those if you haven't yet already. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will send out a survey to you after the webinar concludes, which will just ask you for a little bit of feedback on today's webinar and also give you the opportunity to request a certificate documenting that you completed the webinar today. So if you need that for documentation purposes, you can make a note of that in the survey and we will send you a certificate. You can stay connected to MK through various channels. Follow us on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook. You can sign up for our newsletters and our action alerts if you're not already. You can also join MK as a member. Individual membership is only $40 and you'll have early access to things like these webinars and to next year's conference registration. Here's my contact information if you want to reach out to us about what you're working on or any challenges that you're having that we can help. Or any other questions that you have about what we've talked about today, please feel free to get in touch with me and would love to hear from you. And then finally, some of you may have attended our past network conference in previous years. Every year the conference brings together over 550 teachers, tutors, counselors, administrators, and advocates to strengthen the practice of adult education in Massachusetts and to celebrate the passion and the intelligence and perseverance of this community that is so vital to the Commonwealth's future. So of course we had to cancel this year's conference, and so we're bringing some of that content to you through this webinar series, but we are all hoping and staying positive that next year we'll be back together in person. So definitely save March 26th of next year for our annual conference, and we will look forward to seeing you then. So with that, we're coming to the close of today's webinar. I want to extend a huge thank you to Ruby Reyes for this information and for presenting here with us today. I think this was wonderful, and as we said, we'll have the recording up available for you soon. We will have the slides sent out to you a little bit later today. Please stay safe, everyone. Be well, stay in touch with us, and we look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Thank you very much, and have a great day.